changer. So where is this now? What do you think it is?
Rocket ship. A rocket ship?
A rocket ship could be. Okay.
Or a race car driver?
All right. Okay. Now, this is the very last sentence that I'm going to show you now. No. The pain inside flared up again. It's not the very last sentence. And I closed my eyes as the deck receded below. So he had pain, he was being injected, he was on a chair, being strapped, the chair jerked, the deck receded below. People waved flags as he was going up. Where was he going up? In a rocket with a pain. Do you know what medical tests, how rigorous they are, astronauts go through? So would that be likely to happen to a real astronaut? So what do you think it is? What could it be? The point is not what it could be, which is somebody on an airlift from a ship, somebody has been wounded and they're being airlifted maybe to a hospital. Okay? That's one interpretation. The reason I gave this to you, I did this activity with you, would be to prove what? That as we read, what happens? Perceptions change. Yes? No worries. Our perceptions change. And as we read line by line,
you're interacting with the text.
Interacting, yes.
You're starting to imagine things, and then it's like you're reading one sentence, you imagine, and then you check it with the next sentence, and it's
okay.
Sort of.
So we take account of what we read, and then we interpret, and we're involved in continuous interpretations and reinterpretations. Somebody called reading a psycholinguistic game, and they're not very far wrong. But this happens more intensely, perhaps in situations like this one. Did you read intensively? Did you read every word? Were you trying to interpret very closely? Yes. Why was that? Because there was no other content, there was no other context, there was no other data available to you. Okay? And so the interpretation and reinterpretation was really very, very intense. And you had to deal with the text very locally and very intensively and kind of reveal the images and kind of interpret and reinterpret as you were going on. And you are accomplished language users and speakers. This is the kind of agonizing analysis students go through sometimes if you teach them reading in a traditional or unmotivating way with text, with which they also have problems. Okay? So the idea I'm going to try and sell to you, like a good salesperson today, is I'm going to try and sell you the idea that this is not the way to do reading, although for us it's fun to do that as well on occasion. Accomplished readers can play psycholinguistic games much more readily than others. And I want to show you a diagram which I stole and adapted from Anderson and Lynch's listening. And it's a perfect model of what happens when we listen. But I played with it, and I think, yeah. Although it's from a listening book, I think it's an excellent model of what happens when we read as well. So I've tampered with Lynch's and Anderson's categories, and I wanted to show you how readers interact with text when they are confident with the language. The claims they have are about listening. So these are my claims, perhaps, in terms of reading. So what they say is that we achieve comprehension of written text because we process information and we understand and we make use of existing knowledge that we have. First of all, we can rely on our background knowledge, on what we know about the world, about facts, information, and what we know about social and cultural conventions, how people behave, how they dress, what they say, and so on. The second type of knowledge that we can rely on is our procedural knowledge. It's our knowledge and awareness of how text works. So we've seen other texts, as experienced readers, you've seen other texts. When you see a kind of text, you say, it's an article, it's an email. So you rely on that kind of knowledge. And we know how language is used. We have genre knowledge as experienced readers that we can fall back upon. And we can understand whether something is formal, is informal, it belongs to kind of an academic context, or to kind of gutter press, tabloid press context from the kind of language. And that is our schematic knowledge. Some of you may know it as pragmatic knowledge, which is also a good term to know. We also rely on our contextual knowledge. And our contextual knowledge when we talk is where we're at, who we're talking to. But we do have contextual awareness of text as well. What is this? Where did this text appear? Who was it written for? And who's the writer? And who is the intended audience? Those kinds of decisions change the type of text that we'll be exposed to. And also, as we go into a text, we have awareness of the co-text, what we just read, how we anticipate text to unfold, what went on before, what will be written after. This knowledge begins from the top down. Our knowledge of the world is quite general. It was there to begin with. Our knowledge of a particular context is more finely narrowed down and finely honed into the particular text we are reading. And now we're going to the linguistic elements of that text, which is the language, the spelling, the tenses, the verbs, the discourse markers, etc. And this is our systemic knowledge that we rely on. When that systemic knowledge is in place, we use it, but we don't start from it. An accomplished reader will not begin to read every single word in order to be able to understand the whole. They would probably begin with what they know in order to understand what they don't know. As readers in the real world, also we have desire to read. If we don't like something, if we're not interested in something, we just don't go into it. So we do have a purpose when we actually begin to read. And what I want to suggest to you is that if we don't train our learners to make use of knowledge, or if we don't plan our lessons to make use of knowledge, we're going to have lessons in which the students are going to laboriously struggle with every single word at word for word level. This is called bottom-up processing, and it's what unaccomplished readers and language learners who have problems with the higher levels do, and they struggle to interpret. There are language users, language learners who do that perhaps because they have difficulties coming from another language system as well. Like, for example, I know Chinese learners have a great difficulty, more than a Western reader, because they're also coming from a completely different system of orthography, and right to left readers from Arabic languages might have the same problems. So those kinds of readers need special training. All this is explained to kind of build an argument towards convincing you that what we do in the real world is we have desire to read, and that's more or less how we read. But in the classroom, most teachers don't do that. In the classroom, most teachers ask students to read passages aloud, or to translate them, or simply asking, they may ask a couple of questions and then directly throw the learners into the text and a set of comprehension questions. Okay? And that is encouraging bottom-up processing unmotivated reading, and therefore very little memory of the language or the concepts that were in the text. So what I'm suggesting to you is that perhaps we could imitate life. Life is a good teacher. We've all managed to successfully teach children a language very successfully. So maybe sometimes we need to go with our instincts. So I'm talking about something which those of you who are involved in teacher training, you will recognize immediately as a kind of reading that has three broad stages. But I want to argue that we need to spend different time on the different stages, and that time has to be quality time for different reasons. And I will associate these three stages with priming time. Students need to be primed about text. Students need to be convinced to read for different reasons in a motivated way, and students need time to activate the language that is contained in a reading. This is a general pre-wild post theory, and there is nothing earth-shaking about it. And I'm not going to do anything earth-shaking now, you understand, so I'm just going to suggest some ways in which reading can become more motivated. In general, pre-reading activities are included in lessons because they fulfill those purposes, okay? Are you all familiar with the types of activities I mean? Yes? No? No? Okay. I'm going to demonstrate a few. So, activities at the pre-reading stage will engage the learners in doing stuff before having read the text. Okay? That's prior to laying hands on the text. We may give them bits of the text, small bites, slivers of glimpses of the text, but not the text itself. Okay? And the reason is to activate what they know about the world, what they know about the particular topic, to stimulate, to arouse their curiosity, to get them to really want to read very badly. Okay? I think the best lessons I have seen are those lessons where the students are begging the teacher to give them the text. And the teacher may be saying, well, I'd like you to do something else now before you read. And the students say, no, we want to read. Please give us the text. And I think, when I see that, I'm very excited because it means the teacher has aroused the learner's curiosity so much. They're so excited about their guesses and stuff that they really want to read. I want to connect the idea of pre-reading with the concept of advanced organizers. For me, this ties in very nicely and neatly with the concept that Anderson and Lynch mention in terms of activating background knowledge, schematic knowledge. Okay? Advanced organizers then are the types of prompts or cues that tune you in and generate what you know. And this is really what Lynch is talking about. And I want you to read a quote, which for me, I only found about it very recently, but to me it's very, very important quote. It's not by someone in the EFL, it's by an educational psychologist, and it's as far back as 1960s. And he says, if I had to reduce all educational psychology to just one principle, I would say this. The most important single factor influencing learning is what the learner already knows. Ascertain this and teach him accordingly. I think to a certain extent, many people at this conference have been talking about this concept. Certainly Luke Meddings in his plenary talk just earlier, he was talking about building language that comes from the learner. And that kind of notion is built on the premise that, we work with the students language, and that's language they already know.